So the topic today is, I hope it didn't sound too strange. Why is blood so important in Scripture? We are so accustomed to be told, you know, the blood of Christ when we receive the wine during Mass, and to hear about the shedding of the blood of Christ, that we probably don't realize how shocking it is. It is part of, you know, all religions and all cultures, and yet at the same time, all this talk about blood and human blood is really really needs to be processed. We really need to understand how is it possible, how it can be asked of us, you know, in our modern times where, you know, we have such a respect, not only, you know, for life and for the blood, etc., to still use this language. So we really need to think about this. So in the introduction, at the beginning of your handout, you find a little, I mean, I know it's so simplistic and it's a tiny summary of the fact that the blood plays a huge role in all religions all over the world. You should, sorry, I'm so sorry. You'd better go on the back because here it's a bit dangerous. Thank you. So the role of the blood in religions. So the idea is that when you live in the jungle, or when you live in a context in which you do not control the elements, of course, you do not, there is the problem of you can be assaulted by an animal at any time. There can be earthquakes, there can be problems with of all sorts. So there is this idea that danger is everywhere, and there is the question, what lurks behind the danger which is everywhere? And how can, in some way, if not control what lurks behind this danger, at least anticipate some of it? And what is typical is these animist cultures, is that there is a number of spirits, a variety of spirits, and we don't know who they are. We don't know what their intentions are. And is there a way in which we can propitiate them? We can buy them off somehow. And so in most animist cultures, and what I put here in few lines is a very kind of an extreme summary of a study of sacrifices in animist cultures in Cameroon and Gabon. The idea is that the blood of the animals, of course, is a way of paying, is a kind of a currency. So I don't know who these spirits are. I'm going to offer them something because it is costly. You know, I have to kill one of my, you know, goats or sheep or bulls, and by offering this blood, I possibly propitiate them. Okay, so this is, I mean, obviously, there is a huge complexity when it comes to the explanation of sacrifices in different religions, but essentially, especially in animist cultures, the role of blood is propitiation, okay? And it is seen as a currency, as what I can offer. And also there is the fact that because it implies the death of the animal, it allows us to communicate with that which is beyond death, with the invisible. Now, is there any difference in the way in which the blood is mentioned in the New Testament or in Scripture? And this is what I'd like to explore with you today. So the blood is omnipresent in the New Testament. I've given you a number of quotations. If you start from number 3:1, the famous sentence, the sentence we repeat each time during the consecration, when we repeat the words of Jesus, this is the blood of the new covenant, which is given for you and for all. Okay, so the blood, think about this. There is the word covenant, Okay, so why there is this word covenant, a new covenant, and why blood is associated with covenant. So this is something we need to understand. Then there is the whole letter to the Hebrews, which is an incredibly complex and beautiful writing, which interprets the death of Christ using the images of the sacrifices of the Old Testament, especially from the book of Leviticus. So I read you this sentence, which is in 3:3. Now may the God of peace, who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, by the blood of the eternal covenant. So you see the word covenant is here again. The word, the blood is involved. May he equip you with everything good, etc., etc. And then you have all these sentences like Christ purchased with blood. So you see here, you have suggested the idea of the blood as a currency, as I told you in animist cultures. He redeemed us for God with blood, redemption through blood, propitiation by blood. Then there is this sentence in Romans, since therefore, in 3:8, we have now been justified by his blood, much more shall we be saved from him by the wrath of God, etc., etc. So you have many, many quotations that testify to the role of blood in at least, that's a bit metaphorically or really. That's what we are trying to understand. So number 4, to understand the references to blood in the New Testament, we need to understand the rites involving blood, especially in the 3 forms of sacrifices prescribed in the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, especially in the book of Leviticus, Leviticus is considered one of the most boring books of scripture, difficult to read, is a lot of prescriptions, but actually it is an absolutely fascinating book because it really is about how to maintain the covenant, the friendship, the relationship with God. And the way in which this is done is by, or rather, there are 2 ways. First of all, the covenant is established when God gave the law to the people of Israel. So you remember the people of Israel leaves Egypt, goes through the Red Sea, they arrived to Sinai. Moses, remember the film with, was it Charlton Heston? I can't remember. Moses goes up to the mountain, and then God gives him the tables of the law, okay? So then Moses comes down from the mountain and says to the people, this is what God wants from us, the tables of the law. Do you agree or you disagree? The people say, all the people say, yes, we agree. So it's like a contract between God and the people. And this contract, the moment they say yes, establishes a covenant, okay? So a union of the people with God, so that the people says, we are, or rather, God says, I am your God, and the people say to God, you are our God, okay? So it's this mutual belonging, this covenant, this union, and the way in which this union is sealed. So how do you seal a contract often today? When you, in business, you shake hands, okay? Shaking hands is a contact. So you establish a contact, a physical contact, which means we are one on this. I don't know, in other cultures, there are other ways in which you do this. In the ancient cultures, especially in the culture of Israel, the way in which you seal the unity is by being sprinkled with the same blood. Okay, so what happens is that they kill an animal. Moses kills an animal, or actually he asks, and this is very important, that should not he who kills the animal, but other people who do this. The animal is killed, and then they bring the blood to Moses, and Moses sprinkles the altar, which represents God, and the people. So because the altar represents God and the people are sprinkled with the same blood, they are one. So they are in a covenant. So this is why it is called the blood of the covenant, because it's like the shaking of hands establishes a connection, a unity. So the blood sprinkled on both establishes this connection. The problem is that obviously the people transgresses the covenant and the law. So it is necessary to reestablish constantly the connection, because the connection is broken each time the people or us, violate the terms of agreement. Okay, so for this reason, there was the sacrifice of atonement, or the sacrifices of atonement, in which now there is a variety of sacrifices in the Old Testament, and we are going to have a lecture on this because also it's fascinating. And it is necessary to know them, to understand the Eucharist, to understand what we do in Mass every Sunday. But the idea is that they repeated the same ceremony regularly. So regularly, if you are an Israelite and you have sinned against God, what you do, you bring an animal to the temple. The animal is killed outside the temple by servants. The blood is collected by the priest, and the priest sprinkles again the veil of the altar. Let's say the altar again, then we will see more details afterwards. But again, does the same thing, sprinkles with the blood the altar and the person, and the connection is reestablished. It's like shaking hands again, okay? And then there was another sacrifice which was made only once. So the sacrifice of atonement was repeated constantly in the temple or in the temple. The sacrifice of the covenant was made once by Moses at the beginning when they established the covenant, and was renewed probably 2 or 3 times in the history of Israel. And then there is the killing of the Paschal lamb at Passover. So when, if you remember, the people of Israel was told by Moses, well, let's leave Egypt. The night before they left, they killed a lamb, and they used part of the blood of the lamb on the door lintels of the doors, because the angel of death was supposed passed and killed all the firstborns of the Egyptians, and it recognized that where the Israelites lived by this blood. So we have these 3 forms of sacrifice. So the Passover lamb, it is disputed whether or not it is a sacrifice, but it was considered a sacrifice at the time of Jesus, the sacrifice of covenant, and the sacrifice of atonement. So these 3 sacrifices are mentioned or are referred to in the New Testament each time the blood of Christ is mentioned. So number 5, I'm not going to read the whole passage, but I gave you here the quotation from the book of Exodus, in which what I've just told you about the sacrifice of the Passover lamb is kind of explained. And number 6, so concerning the Passover lamb, the role of the blood here is not to appease God. So it's not as if the angel of death comes, sees the blood on the doors and says, oh, someone has already been killed, so or an animal, so this is why I'm not going to kill the person here. But the role of the blood there is just to mark the elect, the chosen ones. So it's just a way of marking the doors. And there are a number of passages in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, in which the same principle is repeated. So it's not something which is unknown in the mentality of Israel. And then in number 7, what I told you earlier is the sacrificial character of this rite is disputed. In any case, Judaism of the time of Jesus and the New Testament see the Passover lamb as a sacrifice. Then I gave you the passages in which it is spoken of the covenant sacrifice, what I told you about Moses going up to the mountain and receiving the table of the laws, coming down and sealing this covenant by a sacrifice. What I want to notice, you to notice in this passage is something I already mentioned to you. So Exodus 24:3, Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules. So gave them the 10 commandments. And all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. So I told you is the covenant, the terms of the covenant, they agree. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the morning and built an altar. Okay, supposed to represent God at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the people of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificial peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. Now, it is very important that it should not be Moses, just as it was not the priests who killed the animal, because it's not the killing of the animal which represents the sacrifice. So, and for the understanding of what a sacrifice is, this is really extremely important. Moses took half of the blood, so you see, half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he threw against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. And Moses took the blood and threw it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. So the essential rite is the sprinkling of the blood, while the immolation of the bulls is simply the preparation and is performed by servants. The context, number 8, is a promise of fidelity and of mutual commitment, covenant, okay? Blood is a means of expressing the union of the two contracting parties, God being represented by the altar. And this is the only meaning with which Christ appropriated the sacrificial symbolism of the blood in the account of the institution of the Eucharist, when he says, this is the blood of my covenant, okay? Jesus basically gave us a new law. The new law is the law of love. I gave you a new law that you should love each other as God loved, as I loved you, etc., etc. And he sealed this new covenant with us by his blood, by giving his life for us. But we are going to go back to this. Then we have the sacrifice of atonement. I explained to you already what it is, something which was done to reestablish the union which was broken by sin. Number 12, blood is assigned essentially a role of purification, okay? So I'll read you this quotation from Leviticus. Then he, the priest, shall kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people and bring its blood inside the veil. So in the temple, as you know, there was the Holy of Holies, is the place where only which was supposed to be the place of God's presence, in which the Ark of the Covenant was kept. And there was a veil between the Holy of Holies and the rest of the temple. And the priest would either sprinkle with the blood the veil, or once a year, only the high priest could enter into the Holy of Holies. He was the only one who could enter into the Holy of Holies and sprinkle the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the tables of the law, again, because it represented God, and it was a way of re-establishing this connection, this covenant, this union. So bring its blood inside a veil and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it over the mercy seat, which is the Ark of the Covenant, if you want, and in front of the mercy seat. Thus he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the people of Israel. Okay? So the function of the blood, number 13, is also that of sanctifying the altar and the priests. So there are two functions of the blood. One is to purify when something is unclean, and the other one is to mark that which belongs to God. Sanctifying means taking aside and reserving something for the use of God. It can be objects, like the objects of the altar, chalices and etc. Can be the altar, the priests, the servants. So everyone who is connected or comes close to God needs to be set apart. And how you do this, how you seal this, it is by blood again. Okay? So the key question, what I've tried to do so far is to show to you the way in which the use of blood is pervasive to purify and to sanctify in the Old Testament, why it is associated to covenant, because like a shaking of hands, sprinkling two things or two people with the same blood establishes a connection between them. The question now that we have is, what is the reason? So number 15, the reason why the cleansing of sins is attributed to this blood. Why? Why the blood purifies? Why the blood sanctifies? Why does the blood establishes the union? Now, the natural answer that might come to us in the light of what I've told you about animist religions is that the blood can perform this role because it is costly. Okay, so to have blood, you have to kill a bull. You have to kill a goat. So which means, and also the goat killed in this way, you probably might eat some of it, but you have to give some of it to the priest, and some of it needs to be burnt. So you deprive yourself of something. So there is something costly about it. And by doing something costly, you might think you propitiate the divinity. I'm giving you something costly, so please be good to me. Now, this is not the case in Jewish religion. The blood is not, does not have the power, if you want, of sanctifying, purifying, uniting, because it is costly. There is another reason. And this reason is explained in a key verse of the book of Leviticus 17:11, which is translated in two opposite ways in a variety of Bibles. So I gave you two translations. So the first one, number 16 from the NIV, the New International Version, which is the version usually used by evangelicals. So it's a very good translation of the Bible. I use it very often, but it is tilted towards evangelical theology, and I'll explain to you why. It says, "For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I," God says, "have given the blood to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes atonement for a life." Okay? So the idea here is that the blood, because it is costly, purifies you, propitiates kind of God, so that God is not angry with you anymore. Okay? Then there is the New American Standard Bible, which is much closer, this translation is much, much closer to the Hebrew original text, which says this: "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls." Okay? "For it is the blood by the reason of the life that makes atonement." Or you can translate it, "It is the blood because it is life that makes atonement. So here, the idea is that the blood does not make atonement, does not have that power, if you want, because it is costly, because all this kind of stuff, but because there is something about the blood, which we're going to see what it is, that makes it life. So let's go to the following passage. So the context is that of the prohibition of eating blood. You know that in the Hebrew Jewish religion, blood is absolutely off limits. I grew up in the south of Italy where, you know, when I was a child, I remember we killed the pig and everything of the pig was eaten. And with the blood, they made a kind of a pudding. So they mixed blood and sugar, and you eat that, which I found absolutely disgusting. I never managed to do it, but it was a specialty. It was really like, it was a great thing to you know, when you kill the blood. But this is, you know, besides the fact that, you know, in the Jewish religion you can't eat pork, but you know, the blood is absolutely off limits. And there are two passages, Genesis 9:4. You shall not eat flesh with its life, that is the blood. So before you eat the flesh, you have to drain all the blood out of it. And Deuteronomy 12:23, only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the flesh. Okay, so there is this idea that the blood belongs to God, because it is life, and life belongs to God. So in Leviticus 17:11, so number 19, the reason for this prohibition is explained by the atoning sacrificial function of the blood. Okay, according to a proper understanding of atonement, the meaning of the phrase is, the blood is that which I, God, gave you for the purification of your souls and lives. And the difference of translations, which I showed to you earlier, carries an opposite meaning. The NIV, New International Version, by translating it is the blood that makes atonement for one's life, implies an understanding of atonement in the sense of propitiation, of the appeasement of the anger of God, or at least of an exchange, like in animist religions. The life of the animal is offered in place of the life of the person making the offer. The atonement for sin takes the form of satisfaction, or what is called penal substitution. So I should be punished for my sin. Instead of me, the animal is punished. Okay, so the animal takes my place in a sense. Whereas the other translation I gave to you, the American version, closely follows the Hebrew text, for it is the blood by reason of the life that makes atonement. That is, the blood owes its effectiveness in the rite of atonement because it is life. Okay, what does this mean? It means that the blood can do this because it has been given by God and it belongs to God, it is because of the will of God that it has this power. I'm going to skip something because we don't have time to do everything. So number 21, in view of the immediate context of Leviticus 17:11, it is not possible to understand that the blood would atone because it represents the life of the person offering the animal, what I told you, as if one took the life of the animal in place of the life of the person making the offer. The blood does not atone for life, but because it is life, which is what I told you. If you go to 24, never in the ritual of Leviticus, except for the scapegoat. Now, there is the word scapegoating and scapegoat in a culture. And you know where it comes from? It comes from the practice which is described, let's say, where is the scapegoat described? I had a passage in which I thought I'd given you the description of the scapegoat. There. So the idea is that the before the sacrifice of atonement was performed, they took a goat. They would impose hands on the goat, and then the goat was sent into the desert to die on itself. Okay, and the idea was that the sins of the people were transferred onto this goat, this poor goat, and it was sent into the desert and would bring with it the sins of the people. Now, the thing about the scapegoat is that it is not a sacrifice. It is not a sacrifice. So there is a French philosopher called René Girard who has built a whole theory on the scapegoat, which is incredibly illuminating in many ways. But the only problem of his theory is that he considered the scapegoat as a sacrifice. It is not a sacrifice. So it is true that in that case, the sin of the people are transferred onto the animal, but in that case, there is no shedding of blood. And all this to say that we cannot associate blood or the power of blood to the remission of sins, in the sense that it would be the price to pay, or death the price to pay for sin. And I hope I'll manage to explain why it is important. If you go to the conclusion, number 21, we have kind of a wrap-up of all this. So the crucial point is God's testimony in Leviticus 17:11, in which it says, "It is I who has given this blood to you." Blood does not have sacred value in itself, independently of sacrifice. On the contrary, it is the blood of the sacrifice which is expiatory, and not the blood as such. So it is only once the blood has been sprinkled on the altar and on the people that it becomes sacrifice, in the sense that unites and purifies. The victim, immolated through a symbolic action prescribed by God, enters in the sphere of the divine, provides the blood intended by God himself for atonement. Unlike what happens in primitive religions, what I described to you at the beginning, where the idea of atonement is linked to purificatory rites which release powers capable of producing magical effects, in priestly legislation, in Leviticus, this power is attributed to divine will. So it's God says, I've given you this blood. So he created us. He put life into us. Life is associated with the blood because, if you take out the blood, we die. And this blood has been given, God says, I've given it to you so that you can use it to signal the unity between you and I. Rather than an offering made to God, sacrificial blood is therefore a gift made by God to people. In the Old Testament, rites played a role through the will of God. Because of the offering, God removed sin. So the Leviticus insists on a close relationship between the life of the people and the state of holiness and desecration of the holy places, of the altar in particular. By purifying the altar, the sacrificial blood keeps the people in communion with God. And this atoning virtue of blood is linked to divine goodwill, excluding any magical interpretation. Okay? So ultimately, the blood in the Old Testament cases I quoted to you fulfills a similar role, either to establish the union of the chosen people with God, or to restore the unity between them. So, full circle, number 26, what we have is that the Last Supper and the cross contain references to the three blood sacrifices we have seen at the beginning. So the Paschal Lamb, the time of the crucifixion of Jesus, and the Paschal context of the Last Supper in the Synoptics. So in Gospel of John, Jesus dies at the moment in which the lamb of the Passover was killed by the people of Israel. So, and he's openly identified with the Lamb of God. John says, "Here is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." Then Jesus presents his death as covenant sacrifice. Christ refers to it explicitly by speaking of his blood as the blood of the new and eternal covenant. He says, "This is my blood, the blood of the new eternal covenant." And then sacrifice of atonement or expiation, Matthew 26:28. "For this is my blood, the blood of the covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." So therefore, this is the conclusion, the first conclusion I'm giving to you now, but next time we are going to talk about this more in detail. The meaning attributed by the Old Testament to the word atonement. If you remember, I preached about this, those who might have been there, for Good Friday. And I said several times that the word atonement should be probably pronounced at-one-ment, because it comes from the idea that it is that which makes one. So the death of Christ on the cross atones, not in the sense that he pays for our sins, but in the sense that he makes one. He makes, again, us one with God, which was what the blood was supposed to do in the ancient economy when it was sprinkled on the altar and on people. Okay, so the meaning attributed by the Old Testament to at-one-ment, atonement, is that of a purification of the person, ultimately a change in the person. This excludes the interpretation of penal substitution or satisfaction, so that someone is punished for someone else. However, this does not mean that the theme very present in the Old and New Testament of the wrath of God is neglected. Indeed, there is a true sense in which the sacrifices of atonement are intended to appease the wrath of God. So God being represented as angry because the people had transgressed the law. Not that of satisfying this anger by punishing the sinner directly or indirectly, but ultimately in the sense that by purifying, wiping out sin, the atonement removes the cause in man of God's wrath. Okay? So the key idea is that blood, or the symbolism of blood, has been appropriated by the New Testament and by Jesus, not in the sense that blood is costly and my death, Jesus' death, is costly and it pays for you. So in the sense, oh, I'm being punished for you. But blood is appropriated, or the symbolism is blood is appropriated in the sense that, this is a gift God has given to us, so that when we transgress the law, we have something that symbolically can reestablish the connection with him. And transferred to the death of Christ on the cross and the symbolism of "this is my blood, which is given for you," the blood there is the symbol of love. Okay, it's God's love, it's Christ's love for us that reestablishes the union. So ultimately, the sense in which blood, it goes through a lot of, you have to go through a lot of permutations in order to reach the spiritual meaning of blood, which is love. Okay, so Christ did indeed shed his blood on the cross, but the reason why he shed his blood was out of love for us. And the reason why that blood reunites us with God is that it is an expression of a love, and this love is given to us. So us, by receiving the blood of Christ, we receive the love of Christ, and we are supposed to be changed by this love because ultimately, the only thing that unites us with God is love. Now, if you ask me why the New Testament does this very complicated thing of using this kind of gory symbolism to express something which could have been said, as I just said to you, is a question of love, and blood is a symbol of love, etc., etc. It's because blood does have this hold on our imagination and belongs to these categories, which, even if we consider ourselves very modern nowadays, and we don't kill animals anymore, we do kill a lot of animals, we eat them, but we don't kill animals to use their blood sacrificially. But it strikes me that when you look all the films and films and TV series say a lot about the ever hold on us, because they use archetypes that are still part of the way in which we process reality. And you have a lot, whenever there are witches, whenever there are things of this kind, you see that blood is used, and the magical power of blood is referred to. So, and blood is, if we lose blood, we die. And we give blood to people, like, the people who give blood so that other people can survive. So it is an incredibly powerful archetype. And the way in which Christianity or Jesus has, so it basically has appropriated this archetype and to use it to express the fact that it is an expression of love, like giving blood for someone is an expression of love ultimately. So for Christ, giving his blood for us is an expression of love for us.